Hey y'all, if you're logging in this morning and looking for me live, I'm just reminding you that I am not live today. I'm live in the classroom with Group A students. So just so you know, as we go through this module, Group A students will also be doing this when they get home today. Um, the goal is to introduce you guys to the so-called era of good feelings, okay? And some of the things that pan out, all right? I'm going to also show you what I want you to do at the end of the week. The goal is that for this week, I will be teaching you guys a series of things associated with the era of good feelings. And then by the end of the week, you're going to complete journal number 3 for me. And I would like to remind you that journal number 3 goes in your journal, okay? You should already have a separate Google document that has journal 1 and 2 in it, and you're gonna add 3 to it, all right? Remember, this document, which you won't share with me yet, you will share with me towards the end of the semester, will be the place where you put all your journal entries, okay? So it's gonna be on you to be responsible and keep up with them, especially in this scenario where you're going to have lots of time to do it. I know I just gave you a DBQ, but other things continue. And this journal is a way to kind of hold you responsible for the stuff I'll be teaching you this week. You can think of this week as basically 2 lessons that I normally teach broken up into 20-minute segments, okay? So I want to remind you guys about nationalism and sectionalism, because that is that's really the operative conflict. And when you guys start your zeitgeist, and I'm going to give you new zeitgeist too at the end of the week, I want you to really think about nationalism versus sectionalism as the conflict that you use for your thesis and your antithesis, okay? So here's our module for today. And this is what I've been trying to tell you, all right? Nationalism and sectionalism after the War of 1812. You can see that the purpose of this lesson is to understand this growing conflict during this so-called era of good feelings. And I want you to think like, what wins out, right? By the time we get to the presidency of Andrew Jackson, who I guess his claim to fame in history is like to end the era of good feelings, right? He's going to cause so much division in his presidency, Andrew Jackson will, that the era of good feelings comes to kind of a screeching halt because another political party will be formed just because of Andrew Jackson, right? But as you remember, this era of good feelings, right, there's only one political party left, and that is the Republicans, because the Federalist Party disgraced as a result of the Hartford Conventions, pretty much disbands after the War of 1812. The only notable Federalist still left is John Marshall in the Supreme Court, okay? These are all kind of like, remember what I've taught you already. And I'm going to give you kind of just a few leftovers from the Madison presidency here, reminding you that he's a Republican, and therefore, at least in theory, he's going to act like a Republican. Now, something that's not on this list is that he re-ups the Bank of the United States. So the Bank of the United States at this time had reached its point where the charter on it had expired, and it needed to be re-upped by Congress, basically. And James Madison puts his weight behind that, and the Bank of the United States is extended. So this is not a very Republican thing to do, right? Because the Republicans are anti-federal government, power to the states people, individual liberties people. They are strict interpreters of the Constitution, right? They're not loose interpreters of the Constitution. So the Republicans have kind of opposed this Bank of the U.S. for a while now. But here you got Madison saying, no, we need to keep this thing. And what you need to understand is the historical situation is that we just ended a war with England, okay? And England had all these goods in warehouses ready to dump on the United States because we had been their primary trade partner. And so what would happen is they haven't been able to trade with us since 1807, right? And now it's, what, 1815? So it's been a long time. And so they want to dump all their goods on us all at once, which would really hurt the price of American goods because they've got so much surplus, England does, that they can dump their stuff cheaply on us, right? And that is the reason why the Madison administration passes something known as a tariff of 1816. And it's a protective tariff. It's the first tariff in United States history that is meant to protect American business as opposed to just raise tax money, okay? Now, it will also raise tax money. You're talking about a time in U.S. history where there is no such thing as an income tax yet, all right? The primary source by which the federal government acquires wealth to operate is through tariffs, okay? And so this is put in place. It's pretty much supported, especially by our like fledgling manufacturing community here in the United States. So I just want you to see that this is now the tariff will become a huge issue coming in the next 15 years, all right? Right now, I just want to introduce the idea to you, okay? And again, a protective tariff is really not something that a Republican president should do, right? Like small government guy, right? But remember that also Thomas Jefferson kind of set that precedent, okay, about like, all right, I'm a small government guy, I'm a power to the states guy, right? But there are some things I'm willing to do, okay? Now I want to talk about Henry Clay. All right, so there are two really big names at this time. Let me get the whiteboard out for you guys on this one. All right, two political figures you guys are just going to have to know about are John C. Calhoun and Henry Clay. Okay, John C. Calhoun is from South Carolina. Henry Clay is from Kentucky. Okay, both of these these guys rise up to be like huge political figures. Okay. John C. Calhoun is going to be the voice for Southern rights going forward, right? And by that, I mean defending slavery. Let's not make any bones about it. When somebody like John C. Calhoun says Southern rights, he means the rights to own slaves, okay? Henry Clay, as a Kentucky guy, more on the frontier, Henry Clay is going to eventually be more of a supporter of union, like togetherness, like rah-rah nationalism. Okay, so Henry Clay will go on to be the voice of nationalism, okay, in the United States. John C. Calhoun will go on to be the voice of sectionalism, right? John C. Calhoun is going to look out for Southerners and the rights and interests of Southerners, whereas Henry Clay is more about the United States, okay? So these are two like mammoth political figures that are going to dominate this so-called era of good feelings. Again, reminding you that it's called the era of good feelings because there's only one political party now, right? The Federalists are gone. But that doesn't mean there isn't disagreement and that there isn't sectionalism raising its ugly head to challenge the nationalism and rah-rah feeling we have at the end of the War of 1812, okay? And remember that these guys kind of start on the same page as war hawks going into War of 1812. But after it ends, they start to diverge on their political positions, all right? Even though they're technically both Republicans because that's all there is, okay? So Henry Clay is going to propose something. He's going to try and take advantage of the spirit of nationalism of this country, that he wants to propose something known as the American system. Okay, and the American system is simply a series of internal improvements that Henry Clay wants to see the federal government involved in to build a strong economic nation, right? So how do you build a strong economic nation? You not only have to support manufacturing, right, which is just beginning. Now, the Industrial Revolution is rolling over in Europe, but it's just now starting to pick up here in the United States. And Henry Clay wants to build internal improvements throughout the country that support this growing industrial economy. And he thinks the federal government should take the lead in that. So the federal government should do things like build roads, okay, canals. Remember that most stuff is traveled long distance at this time by boat, okay? So he wants roads, canals. He supports the Bank of the U.S. He wants to build the infrastructure of the United States towards an industrial economy. And he wants the federal government to do that. Well, this American system, as he calls it, is going to get vetoed. It's going to get vetoed by President Madison's administration. And you're like, why would they do that? I mean, building this economic power is a good idea, correct? Aha. But this is where the Republicans under Madison decide to take their stand and say, nope, building the economy like this is not the domain of the federal government. And therefore, the responsibility for building roads and canals and stuff like that falls to the individual states as a result, because the federal government says, nope, that's too big. That's not our job. Okay. So, interesting split, right? The Republicans in terms of how they're interpreting what their duty is to maintain small government. No problem with the tariff, but American system, no way. Okay. So now I just want to end up the class today taking a look at what I want you guys to do. So you can see that Journal 3 will be this prompt. Analyze the extent to which the United States changed over time politically and economically from 1815 to 1832. Notice, I did not mention nationalism and sectionalism in the prompt. The College Board will often do this to you. They're going to expect that you know what they mean when they put a prompt together like this. Change over time, what do you mean? Well, did we become more sectionalist over time, where the states started looking more and more out for their own regional interests? Or did we become more nationalist over time after the War of 1812 and become more united as a nation? Okay, so that's a decision I want you to make. And you will see that we will discuss this journal Monday, August 12th. So after all of this week, and I teach you guys about the Air of Good Feelings, and then I think I'm going to introduce Jackson to you on Friday. We're going to start Monday the following week discussing what you wrote, okay? Here is a visual to help you do it, all right? This is not a Kami embedded assignment because you're supposed to write the answer in your journal, okay? So you see the prompt is here. Based on the lectures, create a timeline in your notes and certain important details that allow you to answer the prompt above. When you guys get a change over time prompt and you want to sketch out your argument ahead of time, which I suggest heavily that you do, okay? You don't want to just write blind. You want to sketch it out ahead of time. Change over time, you want to use a timeline, okay? So between 1815 and 1832, which is the election of Andrew Jackson, right? What events on this timeline can you put to show political changes that are taking place and economic changes that are taking place, okay? As well as you want to take note of things that I teach you this week that stay the same, okay? So you want to collect what I call a treasure chest of things under here and under here and under here that you would put. And then when you're done, you want to assess the situation. Do you have more things on this timeline that seem to show change in one way or the other? Are we getting more nationalist or are we getting more sectionalist? And are there any things economically or politically that are staying the same? Okay. So to do this journal, you'll create a thesis statement, and I want a full thesis statement this time, supported with 6 or 7 sentences that reflect your learning and how much change or not you think is taking place politically and economically, right? And then I just remind you that your thesis statement must contain a claim plus how or why that claim is true. So this is what I want you doing as you go each day, the 20-minute periods, and you watch my little mini lectures, add stuff to the timeline, and then make something out of it as journal number 3, okay? So that ends the lesson for today. When you guys come on tomorrow, you'll get another one.